yet another live. I've only done one before. I'm just kind of getting accustomed to how this works. So I just did a video and I said it was November 5th. It's November 4th. It's day 35. So we're into another month. I spent my first 3 weeks of this project in Boston. And then I spent about a week in Framingham. I took a reprieve to help Lorianne out and watch her two dogs, a husky, and then whose name is Milo, and then there's another poodle type of dog named Sebastian, and keep an eye on the house. And she has two adult sons, young adult sons, and they have a friend that stays there. So I spent about 4 days with them in the house, taking care of errands and chores and dogs and such. And here I am. I'm out in Worcester now, and Saturday, it's an early live, so no one might pop onto this. So it's more of just for my practice. But I'm starting to learn some of the differences in areas and what the populations of people that are homeless or impoverished, people that utilize the resources in a given area. So I could say Boston has different pockets of people that are homeless. There's a lot of chronically homeless people that live outside. They have a lot of resources. They're scattered about. There's some mainstay government resources like St. Francis House, which is right near the Commons. And then there's a bunch of churches that serve meals, and they do different workshops and things during the day. They give people a place to come in the day, sleep or work on stuff or charge their phones. It's just hard to find places to sleep in Boston unless you want to sleep in the shelter. And the shelters are more south of Boston. You have Pine Street was a major one. And then you have a women's shelter that obviously I can't go to. And then there's the one I did go to, which is Southampton or Northampton. I can't remember the name of it, but it's right off of Atkinson Street, right in the impacted area, which they just recently cleaned up. They got all the tents out of there, but that one's a 500-bed shelter for men. So one thing I did notice about Boston I didn't like is unhoused homeless people sleep in the streets. Some of them sleep directly on the ground with these what look like moving blankets. It's not cool. There is a night center in Boston that people will stay at. I think it only sleeps 45 people. But you got to wait in line for 4 hours just to get in there. You get a ticket. They keep all your. I don't know. I don't really like the way shelters are run. If there's one thing I think I can do once I'm finished with this, is find a way to create shelter for people that isn't so oppressive. It's literally like prison on the street. So it's very authoritarian in a sense. They shake you down and go through your stuff, and I get it. People don't want violence and things like that. But being able to provide some type of atmosphere where it's come and go, where people are monitored and kept safe without having to feel that presence, I think that would be a lot more helpful for a lot of the chronically homeless people in metropolitan areas like Boston. Framingham was quiet. There wasn't, from what I saw, a lot of unhoused people. They have good resources. Vicky, who runs the Pearl Street Cafe, which is a soup kitchen, during the week serves 3 meals a day, 2 bag breakfast, a bag lunch, and then they serve a dinner. And then you have Smock, which runs other things like a day shelter. There's another mental health drop-in that's run by Advocates. Advocates is another place out there that's trying to provide service, but services were strong. And it was just everything's centralized. I camped outside in the woods like I like to do, and it was relatively close bike ride to downtown Framingham. What I'm noticing a lot is these kind of Western cities, I see, the people I'm connecting with. I see a lot of addiction kind of mixed in. It's not as prevalent like we would see on Atkinson Street in Boston, where everyone congregated and just used drugs willfully in front of the police and covered in sores and boils all over their body, but it's more like hidden. So just getting to learn the area and getting to learn the people has been like the kind of like the most, I'm trying to think of the word for it. It's something that I'm learning to do without bothering people or offending them. I'm really interested in people's stories, and I want to get more of people's talents. Like the other day when I was in Worcester, I went to the Mustard Seed dinner. There was some guys listening to music, maybe kind of like doing a little bit of rapping and stuff. So I want to get that on film. But yeah, just being out here it's been enjoyable. I don't feel desperate or afraid. Well, besides like when coyotes come running around my camp like last night. And it's interesting because any strange noises just wakes you up immediately. I'm ready to protect myself if I have to. And this whole type of lifestyle, which I've taken to calling urban survivalism, it's not really that bad if the weather's not bad. And that's where we're headed now. We're headed into the winter, and it's going to be interesting to see how long I can survive in the winter living outside. Eventually, I'm going to have to go into shelters, warming centers, and see what that whole situation's like. So that's going to be a whole interesting experience. So I guess the goal now out here in Worcester is to get to know the people, get some stories, maybe get some interviews, check out some of the resources, and travel around, see what it's like. The place I'm camping now is near the gym that I use to lock my stuff up, but it's too much of a ride, a lot of hills. That's one thing about Worcester is it's got tons of hills. It's not bike friendly. I have to ride on sidewalks a lot, which I really don't like. And the overall feel of Worcester is a bit menacing. I feel like there's a lot of drugs in this area. Like, I know there's drugs everywhere, and I don't know. It's just, you get a feel for things, and I really want to be careful. I'm not doing this foolishly so that something terrible happens. If it happens, it happens, but I obviously want to avoid it. So getting a feel for the area and the people without offending people and getting myself on the wrong side of violence is forefront. So yeah, my day is going to be exploration. It's Saturday, I'm going to be out here for the weekend and just explore around, get to know the area. If you want, I'm going to upload my camp breakdown from today. I messed up on the day, so just ignore that. I'll write it in the description. And just see how this thing goes. I was comfortable sleeping last night. It's fine. The tent keeps me warm. The sleeping bag keeps me warm. As long as I have my gear, I'm good. If anything were to happen and I lose my gear and things, then I'm going to have to go into some form of shelter. I have to reach out. I'm going to have to get help. Like, that's the thing. Like, whereas people are living in the street, if they don't have the right gear to survive, especially in the cold weather, then your ass out. You're gonna have to figure it out. And I haven't been there yet. We'll see how the winter goes. I just have to be mindful of what I do. So, and I don't use substances. My mind is always clear. I focus on my thing. I don't want to lose anything. Check my pockets constantly to make sure I got my phones, my wallet, my keys. Always making sure, doing checks to make sure I got everything that I need to survive. I think that's one of the most important things. Like, whereas earlier on, my cameraman lost his bag because he decided to stash it. it's not wise to hide things because they can get stolen. Locking them up is one thing. If you can get into if you have a gym membership, or you can get into some type of social service that'll allow you to keep your things there where they're safe, you know that they're going to be there when they come back. But if you just hide things under bushes or behind buildings and shit like that, like, you're running the risk of losing your valuable possessions. So, like, that was something that really struck me as interesting from my cameraman, who is an experienced world traveler in the kind of urban survivalist sphere. Took that risk. And at one point, somebody found his stuff and put it in a dumpster, and he found it again, and he continued to do the same thing. I was like, out of habit. And the people are creatures of habit. And I think a lot of what happens to people getting stuck out here living in the streets is it becomes a routine, and it's hard to break free from that. You know, like, they have all these theories of, you know, what's going to fix that. Like, let's give people housing, let's give people this, let's give them that. And I'm sure in some instances it works, having that support, like bringing in, you know, case managers and different people to help them, you know, give them everything they need, just pretty much pay for everything. Might get them over the hump, but I know from experience that sometimes that doesn't work. So that's somewhere where my behavioral health training and stuff that I learned in psychology comes in handy. And it's something that I keep talking about, is understanding a person better and having specificity of what the best solution is going to be. Is because you can't take a person and, without completely understanding what their situation is, and like throwing spaghetti at a wall, just start giving them a whole bunch of stuff. And it might be more damaging. Like, if somebody struggles with severe substance use disorder, you know, opioid use disorder particularly, and you put them into housing, you give them a place to use alone, you know, there's a good chance that the chance increases that they will overdose and they won't have somebody there to Narcan them or help them. So these are things to take into consideration. Another thing I've noticed is, on the spectrum of human emotion, people exist in a social world where they are surrounded by other people and they have the things that they need at all times. So our emotions become more of a detriment for us. You know, like you see it with, you know, psychology today, the depression, anxiety, all these different mental illnesses, you know, that people experience, these emotional illnesses. Staying out in the woods and sleeping out in the woods at night constantly, having to live in the street and be around people that I might not feel comfortable around, I don't trust. These emotions have become heightened and more valuable to me. Like, for example, I was in my tent last night around 10:41. I remember the time exactly, 10:41 p.m. I'd fallen asleep, and, you know, there's noises, there's wind, there's leaves rustling naturally, but I heard something running around. It was a coyote. I know it was a coyote because I know what it sounds like when a dog is running in the woods. And, you know, my heart pace picked up, you know, my body tensed up. I reached for my defensive weapons. Like, I was prepared. Like, is a coyote going to attack my tent and try to get me? Probably not. But knowing that it was there and there's potential, like, it was frightening, but not to the point where it caused me any emotional harm. It was just preparedness, just natural. So I think a lot of times people over-medicate themselves because they experience these natural emotions. You know, fear of crowds, fear of other people. Like, these are all natural things. Fear of the future. These are things that were instilled in us to help us survive. And now it's become a big business to dull all these things so that people don't have to experience them. And, like, what's the benefit in that? And, like, what's the solution? I think the solution is understanding that in a lot of cases, not all of them, you know, I can't dispel what other people experience and what their mental health situation is. But there's a good chance that people can learn and understand a little bit more about their own emotions and what the validity of those emotions really are in any given situation. So I've put a lot of thought into that. And that's what I love about being an urban survivalist is I get to live life, experience life. I don't have to, have other people telling me what my life should have to be, because that fucking sucks. And I have the education and I have the experience behind me to learn and grow, not only as a human being, but as a professional and understanding the human condition. And like one thing, I take a look around constantly every day at different people. I people watch. I'm a people watcher. People fascinate me. And like I said on my website on the front page is we are all remarkably similar. Our genetic makeup is 99.9% similar from, pretty much any other person. Now, our genes are pretty expansive. Like we have billions and billions of unused code in our genetic makeup called junk DNA. So, and then there's different facets of that, like, through the way we live in this world and survive, different older parts of our genetic makeup can get triggered or untriggered and things of that nature. So it's pretty complex, but we are remarkably similar. It's our experiences and our behavior a lot of times that make us that much more different from other people. So in the process of people watching, I see, things that become stumbling blocks for people's health. And it's something I want to fix in myself, but it's also something I want to be able to help other people fix in their lives. So this will definitely be rehashed throughout this project. It's a big part of what I'm doing. And at the foundation of Identify Society, the company that holds this work, is the understanding that we live in an age now where we all have the choice of how we want to identify. And the rest of society, pretty much has to accept that. And this wasn't always the case. So given this freedom, I think it's wise to understand a little bit better what identity really means in the development of any person. So like right now, I identify as homeless. I identify as an urban survivalist. I identify as a filmmaker. I identify as this. I identify as that. How much validity is there to any of it? Probably none. Some people think I'm an asshole. Like I'll identify as that. I don't give a shit. It means nothing to me. But what really means a lot to me on the spectrum of human engagement is how other people are being treated in society and the expectations they're setting for themselves and how it's impacting human health as a whole. Because if we're getting healthier as a people, then that's a good thing. But if we're getting sicker as a people, if we're, one out of every four of our five of us is on some form of strong, pharmaceutical drugs just to, fix how we feel every day, or, the majority of us are overweight. We all struggle with different disorders and things like that, and it just continues to compile and exacerbate. The human condition is going to erode, it's going to degrade, and we're going to lose our freedom. So there's power in identifying, but there's also detriment in identifying. So finding where the health resides is a big part of this. So But I could talk all day. I'm fucking sitting in the woods about shit that I think about, and I just want to get used to these lives. I'm just gonna keep pushing them out there, so you can watch it later. All right, y'all. I'm gonna shut this thing off. Let's see, how do I shut it off? All right, bear with me. Yep, stop streaming. Everybody have a wonderful day.